Huh. This place is familiar. Oh, it's the Astral Express! Which can only mean one thing. It seems like Hoyoverse reached out and asked, hey, would you like to try the latest patch of Honkai Star Rail and see what Cyrene is all about? And I said yes. So, in case you don't know, we do have a little bit of a history with Honkai Star Rail. About 2 years ago, which is when my gacha story arc started, this game came out of nowhere and it immediately hooked me with its strong sci-fi universe. On top of which, the curveball was that technically this is all written as a comedy. Let me tell you, there is a lot more crying than laughing, but we've been with this game since the very beginning. I especially appreciated the mind-blowing twists behind Penacony, and about half a year ago, we all dove into Amphoreus, which was a new world with an entirely new twist. Haha, get it? It kinda looks twisted. And so, once again, I am happy to say that this video is sponsored by Honkai Star Rail, the amazing RPG from the creators of Genshin Impact, which just keeps winning more awards. Now, here's the thing, the last time we dove into Honkai Star Rail, or specifically Amphoreus, it was with the patch 3.2. That is when Castoris came out, but now it is 3.7. That is 5 patches of story to go through. And so I'm happy to say, thank God there are a lot of really cool improvements when it comes to the storytelling. One point of feedback you may remember from the last time is that there were, oftentimes, black screens with text. These were usually used to push the story forward a little bit further. But if you do it too much, then you end up with a lot of black screen with nothing on it. And that's not really that entertaining. And so what did they do with this feedback? They legitimately turned this game into one of the most cinematic storytellings I've ever witnessed. I am not over-exaggerating. During the normal conversations, most of the time, the story is fine. But when you get to the big story moments, they are big. On top of this, there is one new cool feature. There is a story skip. But no, it is not a lazy version of skipping story. You don't just click it and you miss out on everything that's happening. Instead, you get a story summary for all the stories that you are missing by skipping this. I tried it for some of the lesser parts of the story, and let me tell you, this is a really good way to go through the story faster if you don't have time. And yes, of course, you can always go back and replay scenes later, so it's not like you are missing out on anything. All of which just proves that, yes, the story is still strong in this game. Better yet, just like it was the case with the story of Penacony, the twists for Amphoreus are once again way bigger than I expected. I mean, those of you who watched the last video may remember that I really liked the setting of Amphoreus, which is mostly inspired by the Greek mythos and all of their gods. The refreshing thing about this is that it was quite different from just the classic sci-fi, which we've seen everywhere around this game. No, instead, this was more about gathering a group of heroes that would fight gods, just like in a good old classic RPG. And well, all of that stayed true, until it didn't. And it all amalgamated in a character known as Cyrene, which is someone you'll hear about throughout this entire video, and that is for a good reason. And so my journey specifically started with 3.3. Going very quickly through this is where Cypher got her spotlight, and this is also where the story started paying attention to the cool new theme, death. Yes, I did not expect Aglaia to immediately get assassinated, after which all our heroes started taking the story very seriously. I also remember all the really good soundtracks supporting all of those emotions, with the great revelation here being that all of the Chrysos heirs are not really descendants of gods. The entire time, they've been but mortal. But mortals can of course die. And so, in the most classical Star Rail style, we did get a badass boss, who also got a badass soundtrack. This was an incredibly heroic moment, which was followed by the destruction of the world. The sky was burning, the stakes were high, and all of our heroes started dying. With the great twist being that the assassin that kept stalking us the entire time was none other than a reflection of Phainon. I mean, the death scene with Cypher was quite traumatic, but that of course leads us into Phainon's spotlight, which is in 3.4. this is where things started getting really interesting, because this is where we learned about a crucial point about this world. It turns out the entire time Amphoreus was a simulation. That's right, this entire world is fully artificial. And its simulation is supposed to power up a creation known as Iron Tomb, which is a mechanical vessel that is supposed to walk the path of destruction as the Lord Ravager. The key point being that to feed such a massive vessel of destruction, you need to destroy something big. Something like an entire world. And so, the point of Amphoreus is to simulate destruction that would awaken a new god. Now here, one of the key characters of this story is Phainon, as well as Cyrene, more about her in a second. You see, Phainon was designed as a character that was supposed to suffer. How much would he suffer? Well, he would witness the beginning and the destruction of his world over 30 million times. And every time he would get to the end of his own world, he would reset back to the beginning. But all of this is happening only because of our second hero, Cyrene. A hero who has a great connection to Thule, which is the Eon of Remembrance, and with their power they were able to remove time from this world by sacrificing herself. By doing this, at the end of each cycle, Phainon could reset time just before the destruction of Amphoreus, which would prevent Iron Tomb from waking up. And it also turns out that Cyrene happens to be Mem, whom we have met last time. If this kinda sounds complex, that's because it is. But the further you go into the story, the more all of these complexities become cool. So next we learn that every time the simulation resets, it doesn't fully reset everything. You can imagine that every character has a hidden power level, and every cycle, that number can go up. And since Phainon as well as Cyrene are the two characters who have been at the beginning of every cycle, their power just kept growing. With Phainon absorbing the power of millions of core flames over the eons, until we, as the Trailblazer, arrive. And we get to finally set things in motion. This entire part concluded with Phainon's amazing cinematic, where, wielding the power of 30 million cycles, he decided to fight the destruction itself. And against all odds, even though he is technically still immortal, he managed to scratch it, which is incomprehensible in this universe. After which, our hero perished. Which unfortunately for us means that Iron Tomb was one step closer to awakening. Because destruction. Which gets us into 3.5. This is where Lygus really started getting his spotlight. But more importantly, this is where the final cycle of this world started. And we immediately learn that the final cycle has some changes. For example, since Phainon is gone, there was a change in the title of the Deliverer. Now, it wasn't Phainon who would be the main hero, but rather us, the Trailblazer. And so we become the main character of the story now. But long story short, it turns out that the one behind the entire simulation of Amphoreus is Lygus, whose goal is to destroy Nous, an eon that is calculating the entire universe. But Lygus also turns out to be a member of the Genius Society. His real name was Xandar, the one who invented the core of the Eon Nous, who also split himself into 9 separate parts after he died, with one of those parts being Lygus. And that is of course why Herda also became a big part of the story. And so she arrived on Amphoreus to prevent Iron Tomb from waking up, because according to their calculations, that is an event that would screw up the entire universe. And so what does this amalgamate in? An amazing cinematic fight, of course, which was also full of really complex but really cool twists. For example, defeating Xandar turned out to be really difficult. And so what we did is that we killed him many times, which resulted in the resetting of the universe every time, and every time we did that, we saved it. And we saved those timelines inside Cyrene, who, with the power of Thule, almost serves like a memory save file. After which we threatened Lygus with releasing all the memories at once, which would overload him. This stopped Lygus fighting us, and he agreed to creating a new Amphoreus with the memories of our heroes. We tried doing that in the patch 3.6, but things went horribly wrong because of Evernight, who surprisingly looks just like March the 7th. And that is because Evernight is the reflection of March, while also technically being an emanator. But what is the power that's really behind Evernight? We technically don't know, but it is likely an eon that has not yet been really explored. Long story short, yes, that part is also complex. So just know that Evernight is a force that has been tampering with March, and it has been trying to fulfill March's every wish, which for the most part is to travel with the Trailblazer for all eternity. And so Evernight is trying to make that possible by any means necessary, which sometimes means doing really bad things. Anyway, this is where all the schemes of all the storylines really start scaling up. For example, it turns out that Iron Tomb was just a forged body of a would-be god. And instead of truly destroying News, its goal would be to find its head, because that is what News is, after which it would attach News to its body and become a whole new divine being, one that would lead the cosmos towards destruction. But this is also where we learn something big. It turns out that fully the Eon of Remembrance has shattered a long time ago when it died, and some of its shards became characters that we know. For example, one of these shards became Cyrene, and another one became March, which is where we finally get to the big character of the story, which is Cyrene. And that leads us into the patch 3.7. Now, I don't want to spoil too much of the story that is currently happening, but the cool thing is that this story has so many twists behind it that even if we talk about the big things, there is a lot more that you can explore. For example, yes, in this patch we get to fight Iron Tomb. It is technically all about fighting the simulation itself. But more importantly, Hoyoverse managed to lead up to this moment incredibly well. You see, Iron Tomb has always been something like a virus for the simulation. And so before the patch dropped, Hoyoverse made sure it all felt like we were heading towards that virus. And so everywhere it was possible, Star Rail started getting everything corrupted. From posts on social media to just entire videos. As an example, Hoyoverse hosted a live stream where you could see the progress bar on the corruption of Iron Tomb, and as it kept going, Hoyoverse started changing and deleting entire trailers for the heroes of Amphoreus. In other words, Amphoreus was being deleted. I'll be honest, witnessing that live felt amazing. And yes, at the very end, all the trailers came back to normal because we defeated Iron Tomb, but it all felt like one massive living event. An event that was focused on Cyrene. You see, Cyrene acts like the glue that kept all the stories so far together. But she did all of it from behind the scenes. This is one of the spoilery things that you'll see in 3.7. But her main point is that she just keeps hold onto the memories of the heroes. And she has been with this world since the very beginning. She is, in fact, the heart of Amphoreus. And so she started as a small seed, but the more memories she gathered, the more she evolved and she turned into Mem. And as the 30 million cycles kept going, she then evolved into Cyrene, after which she became the Demiurge. This is why she became the key aspect for defeating Iron Tomb. It is simply because she became the literal ending of Amphoreus. And Hoyoverse knows it, which is why they made sure to make her feel like the final story piece. In-game, this character is the follower of Remembrance, and she brings in a really cool mechanic. Instead of charging up her ultimate normally, she is collecting shards. Because you know, fully shards make sense. And once it is stacked up, she can do two things. Either she pulls out her bow and deals AoE ice damage, which you may notice she pulls out her bow just like March, which also has ice damage. Just think about it as you go through the story. But more importantly, Cyrene can also use her ultimate to support her allies. Normally, she just gives them a bunch of stats, but if they are one of the Chrysos heirs, it also has a special effect. And this effect changes depending on what hero it is. For example, Hyacinth gets a lot more regeneration, so she can heal people more. And she generates more power for the memory sprites of someone like Castorus. It makes sense for Cyrene to have this unique ability because she carries the memories of all the heroes. She knows about their legends, she knows how much power they've gained, and so of course she knows how to extend those powers. This is all just incredibly thematic. In a way, you can also see her as the empowerment of hope for all of our heroes, which is what you can see in her design. Not only is it reflected in the bright dress and the hair, but you can also notice a lot of Easter eggs and hidden details around. For example, she does have the infinity loop on her hand because of Amphoreus. Yes, it is a looping universe, now it all makes sense. And so overall, this is a great way of turning a character into the ending of a story. I mean, Cyrene has been there from the beginning, and that is literally from the point of the story and as a character. And now she also became the final page of the book, which leads us to one final part to talk about. And that is the rewards. You see, during this patch, everyone gets one free Golden Companion Spirit, which you can redeem to get a free 5-star character. I used it on Topaz because I needed her for Swarog. But there are also a bunch of bonuses for getting Stellar Jades during this patch. They are also bringing back 6 of the Chrysos heirs split into 2 parts. This is to make sure that you can get them because Cyrene has the special effects for them. There is also the constant flow of new events, and yes, there is a permanent game mode, which is an auto-battler, and it works pretty well. On top of this, while Cyrene, Castorus, Tribi and Hyacinth are up, you can use this code to get some extra Stellar Jades. And with that, once again, I really want to thank Hoyoverse for sponsoring this video. I already really like the story of Amphoreus, but now I got an extra nudge to really see what's gonna be happening behind the story. And after diving back, I can confirm, indeed, this universe is incredibly cinematic. On top of which, I can also mention that literally 3 days ago, I was in China for the first time, and it turns out they do have a lot of cool Star Rail merch.